Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Stop Selling and Start Scaling. My name is Colin Mahan. I'm a director of programs at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you will see in the chat in just a moment, the Nasdaq Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So check out those links and resources in the chat. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, some of you have already done this, so hello, but let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. Secondly, we're going to open up for a live Q&A near the end of the event, so please submit those questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the session. We will try our best to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the center would be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for startups. We're humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. Now, before we get started, I'm going to launch two polls just to let us know how you're feeling about your business and also what's keeping you up at night. The first poll, how you're feeling about your business, helps us understand the wellness resources that we should be providing for you, the entrepreneurs that we serve. So let us know. We know that it is a tough journey, so we are here to support across all facets of entrepreneurship. Thank you for voting. I want to end this poll in a second. Looks like optimism is on the rise. So there is a little bit of survival and anxiety out there. So hopefully this presentation will alleviate some of that. Our second poll, what's keeping you up at night, helps us understand, in addition to this program that you're attending today live, what programs you want us to go after in the future. So we'll put these up in the next couple months based on these responses. Appreciate many of you. Looks like sales is at the lead, which is great for our awesome guest today. All righty, so I'm going to end this poll and share those results. Thank you for voting. Looks like marketing, scale, and finance are a little bit around there too, which I know we're going to definitely talk about the number one pain point today with our special guest. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest, Alice Heiman, Chief Sales Energizer. I love that.
Let's get energized. I love that everybody wants to talk about sales, and I love that everybody is optimistic. I am extremely optimistic, and the companies that I work with are optimistic as well and thriving. So I know there's a little doom and gloom on the horizon here, but I'm not having any of it. I definitely think that we all can thrive in any economy if we know what to do.
I love it. Well, I'm already feeling energized, and you're known in the business world as Chief Sales Energizer. So can you tell us about your business journey and how it led to do what you're doing today?
Well, it's been a long journey to get here. And for those of you who may know me, you know that I started off as a school teacher many years ago. But I joined my father's company, Miller Heiman, back in the early 90s. And that is where I really became an expert on the complex sale. So that was, like I said, the early 90s. Started my own company in 1997. So now you've all guessed how old I am, right? So I've had a lot of opportunity to learn from the Fortune 500, to learn from founder-led companies, from startup to 30 years old. And my goal is to make it easier for companies to sell, make it easier for customers to buy, and to make sure that the complex sale is just a little less complex.
Love that. And you have been through several cycles based on you dating yourself of interesting markets, if you may.
Indeed. I've seen it. I've seen good economies and bad. And I know that if we stick together, if we help each other, we can always get through.
Great. Well, great timing to host you then. So CEOs come to you from all over. and they want to scale their sales. So what are some of the common challenges that they have doing it?
Yeah, well, I think that what happens is that I have, excuse me one second, Landon. Okay, this is reality, right? So here's Landon. He needs to be held. So I'm going to hold him and talk to you at the same time. Uh,
We love dog moments.
Little dog moments. I have a 5-pound poodle, you guys. So his name is Landon. Well, all right. So we're trying to go from incremental growth to exponential growth, right? That's what scaling really is. And that order of magnitude is just really different depending on the size of your company, what you sell, and the size of your average deal. But whenever you're trying to speed up the pace, right, of the growth, there are several things that come into play. And I would say that the thing that maybe gets in the way the most of scaling is selling. And as ridiculous as that sounds, that's what I find. So the CEOs that, I talk with, I interview on my podcast, or that I work with directly as my customers, all have mostly a longer life in sales. They're not startups. So they have been running their companies for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. And they have noticed that things have changed, but they're not sure exactly how their company should be adapting to that. And so they are still doing things the way they might have done them 10 or even 20 years ago. I mean, even if they've changed a little bit, the pandemic certainly speeded up the way things were changing. And so we know our buyers are buying differently. That's been happening over time, but the pandemic speeded that up even more. And so the great inhibitor to scaling is just continuing to sell the way we have always sold. It just simply doesn't work very well anymore. Anybody else noticing that besides me?
Yeah, of course. I've seen it. And I know we're going to dive into a bunch of the tactics that you've got. So I'm looking forward to getting into them. So in terms of pipeline development for CEOs earlier in their business journey, how can they begin to fill the top sales pipeline?
Yeah, so I think this is probably part of the problem with scaling always, right? So especially with entrepreneurs that are in the start, really just starting up, or maybe they've been in business for a while, but they're launching a new product, right? We have to get the awareness out there and do what everybody calls fill the top of the pipeline. I personally like to call it a funnel, because if you think of the difference between a pipeline, which is straight, and yes, you do want the flow to continue, but I don't just want one or two things out at the bottom. I want a big, wide funnel. So there's lots and lots of opportunity that funnels down to the ones that are the best for everyone, right? Because selling is, really about making a good fit and ensuring that the customer can be successful with what they purchased from us. So if you think about filling the top of the pipeline, I would say that every company out there right now is struggling with that. And why? Well, for one thing, the customer is harder to get to than they ever have been before. Now, when I was young, back in the 90s, and I needed to get a hold of a senior executive, it just simply wasn't that hard. I could pick up the phone and call them. We had cell phones back then, but if anybody remembers, they were like a brick. In fact, we used to call them bricks. They were gigantic. So nobody was like using their cell phone. So you caught them at their office and they answered their phone. It was just easier. And also they had to talk to me if they wanted to learn about my products and services, because there was no other way. Really, the internet was just barely beginning back then. And most companies would have to mail out a catalog or mail out information or show up and visit or talk on the phone. That's the way it was. There are some CEOs out there that still believe that by dialing and dialing and dialing, you're going to get people to pick up the phone. And the fact of the matter is, a small percent of them will, but it's too small and too much effort to get that small percent. So what we want to make sure that we are doing is thinking about how buyers buy instead of how we have always sold. So how we get the buyer's attention is much different now. We need to get that sales and marketing alignment. and make sure that we can meet the customer where they are, from hello to I am your loyal customer, which is beyond the close, beyond the onboarding, and to successful use of the product. And user adoption goes with that, right? We have to have high user adoption. So if you look at why are we struggling to fill the pipeline? Well, let me just give you one very tactical example. I know some of you out there have SDRs or BDRs, sales development reps or business development reps, sending emails and making phone calls to decision makers who could possibly buy your products and services. So let me ask you this. How many of you, and put this in the chat, how many of you absolutely have SDRs or BDRs, somebody sending out cold email and doing cold calling, maybe using LinkedIn cold? Just put yes if you're doing that right now in the chat. And let's just see how many people. I'm going to open my chat so I can start to see. Yes.
Yes. I wish. No. Yes.
Okay. So you have some people who are responsible for doing some cold outreach, right? And how many of you have these people reaching out, not to people at their own level, other SDRs, or even other people maybe a level up, but you have these people reaching out to senior executives who are decision makers with C-level titles or VP titles? If you are having them do that, put yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Yep. I see them coming. Okay. Lots of yeses. Sometimes yes, no. Okay. Mostly yeses. All right. Now, of those of you who said, yes, I have SDRs, BDRs reaching out cold to senior executives, I want you to answer this question. How many of you personally take a call from an unrecognized number in the middle of your workday and are delighted when it's someone who's trying to sell you on an appointment with their account executive? How many of you take those calls every day? How many of you take them? Never. No. Okay. Anybody else here seeing the madness right now? Is anybody else seeing the madness? You are having your SDRs do a task that is going to bring massive failure, because the percent of people who will actually answer their phone when they don't know who's calling to interrupt the middle of their day is pretty much zero. And even if you did answer it by accident, you all probably would not be delighted to have it be a cold call and someone trying to set an appointment for you with their AE, right? Their account executive. So some people are saying, yes, I try to listen when salespeople call me, but I guarantee that you're not taking calls every day on purpose for somebody to sell you something. So what we have to think about is, what do people want? Now, my good friend Diana Guerin always says, your prospects are depending on you to find them, right? So they do need to know about your products and your services and the results that you can bring to them and the success that you can help them have. But how, if they're not answering their phone? I mean, how many of you have be honest, more than 500 emails in your inbox right this minute? More than 500, raise your hand. Say yes, put yes in the box. More than 500 emails. Oh yeah. So are you looking through those to find the ones from SDRs and BDRs that are trying to sell to you? No, you're deleting those as fast as you can. And so are the people your SDRs are reaching out to. They're deleting those emails as fast as they can. They're not taking their calls. They don't want the spam in their LinkedIn. So how do we fill the top of the funnel? Right? It's a problem, Colin. Here's the thing. As the CEO of the company, as the senior leaders of the company, you have absolutely the best position to be able to help your salespeople meet people. But most of the time, we're not using that. We don't use that leverage, right? So if you just think about the list of companies you're trying to break into and all the people in your company who might possibly know some of those people, And you just started inside your own organization to ask, hey, does anybody know a person at this company that we're trying to get into? And everybody looked to help the salespeople. It is unbelievable what happens. Now, I say this and people say, oh, yeah, well, we do that, or this, no. You don't do it consistently. Now, I have never met a company that does. And when I start having more of this team approach where the senior leaders are on the lookout for the ability to give an introduction to a salesperson into a company that they'd like to get into, phenomenal things happen. So think about that as one way of filling the top of your pipeline. Who at your company can make introductions for the salespeople? Because an introduction is far better than trying to go after them cold. So that's one thing we can do to fill the top of the funnel, Colin. Another, which is not that hard to do, even if you don't have a lot of resources, is just provide great content. Now, there's two ways that you can do that. You can curate content or you can create content. And if you don't have a machine that creates content all the time, that's okay. You can start doing that slowly over time, or you can repurpose a lot of the content that you already have. But there is so much great content about your industry and about the problems that you solve from reliable sources on the internet. You could curate that content and use that to help motivate people to want to talk to you. See, we have to pique their curiosity. We have to get them to raise their hand and say, oh, I think you might be able to help me. But when we don't have good content out there, we can't do it. So that content has to be floating around the internet, right? It has to be on your social media. It has to be on your website. We have to make it easy for customers who show up on your website to get what they need to pique their curiosity so they'll have a conversation with a salesperson. So that's another way we fill the top of the funnel, and that requires sales and marketing alignment. I could go on this all day, Colin, but I know you have other questions. But the key is you cannot continue doing things the way you have been doing them if you want to fill your pipeline or funnel. You're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to come up with some new and better ways. You're going to have to use referrals. You're going to have to use content, and you're going to use trade shows, and you're simply going to be more creative.
I love that. Solid gold advice to kick us off. How about CEOs later in their business journey? What are some tips for effectively managing the pipeline in the long term?
Yeah. Well, once you have a lot of clients, there's a lot of leverage. And again, just like, in the early days, we don't leverage the networks of our senior executives. Once we're more mature, we forget to leverage the network of our customers who know and love us. So that's crazy. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't have a plan, a process in place to leverage those great relationships that you have to get introductions. And so I think that that's always the first place I want to start, right? So if you want to fill the top of the pipeline, you start with your existing customers. You first look at all of the existing customers you have and how you currently help them. And then if there's any space to do something else with them. So we call that white space mapping. List all your customers, list what they buy, what they pay, if they renew, don't renew, these kinds of things, whatever, depending on your business. And then you see where there's expansion opportunity. Can you upsell, cross-sell, these kinds of things? That's number one. That fills your pipeline because opportunities come from existing customers and new customers both. So fill your pipeline first with opportunities from your existing customers. Next, think about that list of companies you want to break into that you've never done business with before. And instead of starting out with cold messaging, of course, remember, you've got all that great content out there so those people can see it and they get to your website, they know what to do. Now think, how can we get an introduction? So before any of your sellers are allowed to go out cold, the first thing should always be, can I get an introduction? Can I get an introduction from someone on my own team? Can I get an introduction from a colleague or a partner? Or could I get an introduction from one of our very own clients who might know someone at these companies that I'm trying to break into. So I think when your company is more mature, you absolutely need to leverage your current customers. Now, there's a caveat to that, Colin, because if you have a lot of customers, but they're not successful customers, they may not be willing to make introductions for you. So shore that up first. Make sure they're happy and successful, not just, oh, happy, yes, we love it. Is there user adoption? Do you use all the tools that are provided? Are you successful using what we sold you to get the results you need and help your customers? So if you're there, then you have every right to leverage those relationships to get introductions. If you're not there yet, get there so you can leverage those relationships.
That's great. And you talked a bit about how sales and marketing need to have a marriage, but often sales, marketing, and customer success fall into silos. And what can this do to sales and process? And what can CEOs do to foster collaboration between these departments?
So many things have changed as we discussed, right? We've been on this journey and the buyer has changed the way that they're buying. And because of that, we need to change, but we're lagging behind. So as sellers, we lag behind where the buyers have made their changes, and we're still trying to sell to them, as I mentioned, the way that we always have. So today, to really meet the customer where they are, we simply have to figure out first, what is the journey? So as the CEO, you should be very familiar with your customer journey. Where do they start? How do they first figure out they have a problem? And once they figure out they have a problem that needs to be solved, what do they do next? Do they ask a colleague? Do they Google? What do they do next? And how do they find you, right? So then once they found you, what do they do next? And then what? And then what? And then what? And when you know that journey really well, then you as CEO can orchestrate all of the departments in your company to work together and meet the customer at the various points in that journey. Now, we used to believe, and some of us still do, that sellers are the only ones who can do that. Sellers work with the customers, that's it. Well, the fact of the matter is that the Gartner research and other research tells us that in the B2B complex sale, most buyers would prefer a rep-free journey. They don't want to talk to the sales reps. Now, I think there's a lot of reasons for that we won't go into, but let's just believe that that's true for 1 minute. If they don't want to talk to your salespeople, or at least don't want to talk to them yet, how do we provide as much information as we can without overwhelming them on our website, right? Can they get a demo on their own without having to fill out a form and wait for someone to call them and schedule, right? Is there some kind of explainer video you could do, a bit of a generic demo that just shows them a peek of what it looks like, right? Again, you're trying to pique their curiosity so that they want to have a conversation with a salesperson. So the best way to meet the customer where they are at the beginning of the journey might be pure marketing. Now, if you have a find, try, buy model of some type, then you might insert customer success. So you found us, you tried it. Our customer success is going to call you to see if you need any training, show you how it works, onboard you, get you started, right? And then they'll try to convert you as well or sometimes a salesperson will. It just depends how it's set up. So think about your particular customer's journey, work with your team to map that, ask your own customers what their journey was, how they found you, get that solid. And then look at all of the different team members you have, subject matter experts, sales engineers, people who work the early part of the sales cycle, the account executives, maybe the account managers, customer success, marketing, VPs of sales, VPs of marketing, your own senior executives. Who is the best to meet the customer at each point in the journey? And it's not always going to be who you think it is. And because of the way our buyers are buying now, and because we need to meet them where we are, we must have a team approach to selling. We can no longer send one salesperson out to conquer the world on their own. We have to provide them with a team because our customers demand it. They want to know more than one person at your company. They want to know what their resources are. They want to know how you, a smaller company, will support them, a bigger company, things like that. So did I answer your question, Colin?
You totally did. This is all solid gold advice. And speaking of the sellers, you encourage CEOs to lead sales themselves as opposed to giving it to the sellers. So how much time and how involved should CEOs get in the sales process?
Yeah. So the CEO will always have a role in sales, but that role changes as the company matures. And so when you are brand new, just started your company, so excited, you and your co-founders or you and the senior leaders, you're all the sellers, right? It's founder-led sales. And that's the way we do it. And it really works well for most companies at the beginning, because who doesn't want to talk to the founder, right? So that's a great way to get started. And I often see that companies cut that off too soon. Just because you've hired some sellers and started to grow a sales and marketing organization doesn't mean the CEO should step completely out. Even when there's a sales leader in place, the CEO shouldn't step completely out. But what you do and how you do it should change. So your role should become less and less tactical and more strategic. So for example, once you have some sellers on board and they're working with their teams to be introduced to new companies and learn about how they can solve problems and give them results, sometimes the CEO can be brought in as a thought leader, not to talk about the specifics of how we're going to close the deal, but to talk about partnering at a higher level and ideas that will help this company get better results. Because after all, the founder CEO, even if they're 10 or 20 years in, they're the one who built it, right? Who knows it better than they do? So you can think about helping your salespeople know when to position you as CEO and when to position the other senior leaders with the right people at the organization you're trying to sell to. So I think that becomes really important. I also think that the CEO's role is to ask the hard questions, right? Has our buyer journey changed? You know, every maybe 6 months to a year, what's changed about our buyer's journey? Is there anything of note that we need to conform to, make a change ourselves, right? So asking those hard questions. I think that the CEO should also make sure that the sales leaders are being developed themselves so that they continue to grow and learn how to be better and better and how to have a peak performing sales team, right? And then I think, every once in a while, the CEO should just peek into what is a day in the life of one of their sellers like, or a selling team like? What do those emails look like that are going out to other senior executives at the companies that you want as customers? What do those LinkedIn messages look like? What do those phone calls sound like? I think sometimes you would be appalled, right? So we do need to know what that outbound messaging looks like, not to be in the details all the time, certainly no, but every once in a while, I would sure want to take a peek. I unfortunately have had the opportunity to send some emails back to CEOs that came from one of their sales development reps or AEs and just said, hey, I just was curious if you were aware what your salespeople are sending out. And, they weren't, and it wasn't good and it needed to change. So you got to check in every once in a while, maybe get a secret email address and sign up for your own mailing list and secret shop your own company. But absolutely, CEOs need to have a role in sales, but they need to adjust that role to what their company needs at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the title of this topic, Stop Selling and Start Scaling. Can you talk about what it means to scale sales and what are some key indicators that it's time to stop selling and start scaling?
Yeah. So I think that, in the beginning, we really are doing the kind of traditional selling, especially with founder-led, although it's a little bit different because you're still learning from your customers because you're shaping whatever it is you're building, right? But we do the kind of selling where it's one person talking to one person and they're, doing a typical discovery type of, hey, how does this work? What do you do? Or maybe it's a more in-depth discovery than perhaps we do later on. And that probably shouldn't be the case, but it is. And then, we kind of work our way through a process. And I think that works when the founder is doing it. A lot of times it doesn't work so well when the sellers are doing it. And so today, we need the sellers to be seen as trusted advisors. They need to be subject matter experts. They need to understand how the customer buys, they understand the customer journey. They need to understand the solution set that could be plugged in. So not just the competitors, but how people can solve things internally, or of course, do nothing and what drives people to do nothing. They need a bit of understanding of basic human psychology and how salespeople make decisions. And how buyers make decisions. And then they also need to understand how to guide people to make a good decision and bring a group to consensus if you're in a complex sale, because there's always, 8 to 12, who knows how many people who are whispering someone's ears about what they should buy and how, right? So there's a big buying committee out there. So I think that, we have to make those adjustments. And the selling, when I'm saying stop selling and start scaling, it's like, okay, we have this incremental growth. We have a pretty good base. And now we really want to, double our sales in this period of time. How are we going to do that? It's not by the typical high pressure, hit your quota, selling that we are used to. Here's your list salesperson, go cold contact them, get them on the phone, do a discovery call, move them to the next stage, close the deal. That kind of selling just doesn't work anymore. The selling that works is, let me know you and understand. Let me help you thoroughly understand your problem better than maybe you would have understood it before you talked to me. And let me see where the challenges are going to be in this decision-making process. Let me help you solve. And if we are the best fit, magnificent. That's going to be a beautiful thing. But if we're not, I want to figure that out fast. And I want you to figure it out fast, so we're not wasting each other's time. So that's why I say also that maybe the seller isn't the very first person who talks to some of the various buying influences. We have some different, ways to help them gain some of the information they need, so that they're curious enough and interested enough to come along on the journey together, and let us help them make a decision, and let us help them make the best decision. And when they choose us, they already know they'll be successful, because up front, we brought our customer success people in to show them how we do the onboarding, how we make them a successful customer. That's known. It's not an unknown quantity. It's already known before the deal is ever closed, which ensures that we don't have a lot of buyer regret when we bring that up front, right? So I think, there's a lot of pieces here that traditional selling, or any kind of pushing, manipulation, any of that, coercion, it's completely out. I hope it's been out for a long time. But, a lot of people still teach their salespeople to do BANT. You know what BANT is? Anybody know what BANT is? Yes? No? Anybody? BANT means budget, authority, need, and timing. And they teach their sellers to do a discovery call. If I'm a senior executive and you've got my attention, you've got me on the line, you better not ask me if I have a budget. I wouldn't even be talking to you if I didn't have a budget or know how to go get a budget. That's an embarrassment, right? And then you're telling your salespeople to disqualify them if they don't have a budget or the authority. Oh, are you the person who will be making the decision? How dare you ask me that? So if you think about what we're teaching sellers to do, it's absolutely ridiculous. If somebody did that to you, you would hang up on them. So we have to teach sellers to help first, understand, really be good orchestrators and just stop selling. I know you have a quota and I'm sorry, but just stop selling and start helping, solving, and making sure the customer will be supremely happy if they do buy from you. And that's when you can really start scaling, because you put your focus and your energy in making sure others are successful. So your whole approach is different. And when people love you that much because you've made them successful, they help you continue your growth. They help propel that because, as I mentioned earlier, they're willing to make introductions to other parts of their company or to sister companies or to people they know or where they used to work or where they're going to work. They're much more interested in doing that because they want others to have the same success that they've had.
Love that. So many golden nuggets. And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but I want to dial into it a little bit more. And, the ecosystem, the way that we communicate and customer engagement and the buying process has changed in recent years a lot. And so what impact does this have on customer acquisition and retention, and any advice around navigating this new world that we're existing in? Yeah.
Again, back to customer acquisition and keeping your pipeline full, right? So we need lots and lots of people to know about us so that when they need what we have, they're ready to go, right? That's not easy to do, but it can be done. So on the acquisition side, first of all, just make it easier. Make it easier for your selling teams and make it easier for your buyer. If you want to acquire customers faster, you have to make it easy for them to buy from you. So think about this. How many of you believe that somewhere lurking in your company, there is a sales prevention department? Think about it for a second. You got any sales prevention departments? Type yes if you think you might. Anybody? Oh, I don't see anybody saying yes. Oh, Paula thinks she might have one. Oh, Kim thinks she might have a sales prevention department. Greg's saying no. Yay, Greg. Okay. Yes. So some of the CEOs are their own sales prevention department because they are the bottleneck for everything, right? Especially when we're younger companies and we're growing, we become the bottleneck, right? Well, think about this. How long do your contracts sit in legal? Is that making it easier for your customer to buy? How hard is it for a customer to get a demo? Do you have an explainer video on your website? Can a customer learn what kind of results they can get? Do you have customer success stories on your website? Or is your website a sales prevention department? They get there and they bounce because they can't find what they need. So sometimes we don't even recognize, right? We tell salespeople, go out and sell this thing, sell a lot of it. And then all of a sudden production can't keep up. And so things aren't being delivered and salespeople have to take angry phone calls. So we really have to look for these sales prevention departments in our companies and make sure that they're not happening. And again, the CEO is the only one who can orchestrate that, right? Think about, when was the last time your sellers sat and talked to your finance department to talk about how they interface with customers? When was the last time your sellers talked with your customer success people or your customer support people to find out how it's going and how they're interfacing with customers? What about ops? Are your internal teams communicating to make sure there isn't a sales prevention department to make sure it's easy for the customer to buy from you? Because I see it all the time. We lengthen our own sales cycle because we have these sales prevention departments and we're making it hard for our customer to get the information they need, to get the meetings they need, or the salespeople simply don't even update Salesforce properly and they get away with it. Nobody's holding them accountable. So the next step isn't soon enough, or it's not the right next step. And that lengthens the sales cycle. So we really have to be thinking about the things that we're currently doing for customer acquisition that may or may not be working. And, I've said this a million times. What are you doing today to make it easier to be your customer and harder to be your competitor? Ask your team that question and brainstorm around it and come up with some answers, right? So as far as retention, that's a whole nother ball game, Colin. I mean, we just are not doing a great job of retaining our customers, and they see a shiny object and away they go, right? So people are setting up customer success teams, not customer support. That's there for a different reason, but customer success, account managers, and customer support working together with the AE to make sure that the customer is onboarded. That's where the retention starts, right? The good onboarding, that solid onboarding, and then the user adoption and the success with the product, right? Can they be successful using what you sold them? So we shouldn't be measuring the number of customers we have. We should be measuring the number of successful customers we have. And that is what's going to make the difference on retention. So there's a lot of pieces there, but that's the basics.
And I love that a lot of these building blocks are to get ready for that scale moment. And you talked a little bit about founder-led sales. So some people have been chiming into the chat, they're in that earlier stage of their journey. So what kinds of questions should founders, CEOs be asking their customers in the early days in order to scale with success?
I think they should be curious about many things, right? Specifically, how they solve these kinds of problems and what does their buying process look like when they have to solve these kinds of problems. And they can tell you a lot, and sometimes they can tell you, I don't know. And I think that's a big challenge that we have today. When a company determines that they need something, a person at a company says, oh, we need this software, we need this hardware, we need these tools, right? Then all of a sudden they say, well, let me form a committee of people who would be involved in this and get them to go and figure out, what we need and what the options are, right? And so as they do that, that's where we, are trying to meet the customer where they are. But they may come up with, hey, we've never bought anything like this before. We don't know how to buy it. So if a founder hears them saying that, then the founder wants to ask more questions. Well, have you bought anything similar? How did that work? What are your biggest concerns about, right? And especially if you're a small company selling to a company 10 to 1,000 times your size, there's a little bit of risk mitigation that needs to go on, and you need to ask them about that. Hey, we're a small company, you're a big company. Tell us about how that will be to work together and what will you need from us? So I think those kinds of questions are helpful to just get people to talk. And when we are learning that they don't know how to buy this particular thing or how the buying process will work, what's fantastic is if we've done this for a while, we can tell them, well, other companies like yours have done this. And that's where you can really bring value. You bring value when you can bring an insight in that helps them to make better decisions. You bring value when you can help guide them. And so when you have information they don't have, others like you have done this, others like you are doing this, and even maybe compare them up to talk if they're not competitive or anything like that, right? So I think that you can use that information that you gather as a founder seller, right? As with founder led, and just keep tailoring. And this will also help you build the structure for the salespeople that you're going to hire that will come after you. And this is why founder-led sales is so important. The founder can learn so much to make the salespeople successful. But usually they think the salespeople know more than they do because they hire people who have been selling for a while and they just bring them in and say, oh yes, go sell. And then they're not as successful as the founder. And it's because that transition of here's what I learned as a founder while I was selling to here, you are a professional salesperson, you should know how to do this. It doesn't translate. It doesn't transfer. So we need to be really careful as founders when we're hiring our first salespeople and make sure that we really give them the opportunity to do a remarkable job. And that means that we have to do that in tandem with them and tell them what we've learned as founders while we were selling, and make that into some bit of a process that they can learn and use.
I love that. And I know we're about to come up on our Q&A portion, but you mentioned something that I want to double click on really quick. All right. So early team, what are some things that you need to look out for first couple salespeople, or even just salespeople in general when hiring at a startup?
Oh my gosh. I can't even, there's so much, right? When you're hiring salespeople, it is really difficult because salespeople are good at sales and they sell you on hiring them. So you absolutely need to have a hiring process. So first you have to know, what do you want the seller to do? You're hiring a person to do what? Then you have to ask yourself, is that realistic? Could I do that? Can someone else? Because if it's your first salesperson and no one else has ever been successful doing that, be careful what you wish for, right? So build not just a job description, but the success factors. What do you want this person to do? How do you want them to do it? How will you know when they're successful? And then you need to be prepared to train them. Even if you hire somebody who is from the industry or who has been selling for some time, it doesn't matter. They still need training. They still need time to watch you and how you do it, or how the other sellers do it. And they need a time to learn, right? So be careful there. Get that set up. Then get that hiring process in place and build bench strength, right? So if you know what you want to hire, whoever is working in your company to do that, HR, a talent manager, the hiring manager, whoever it is, needs to reach out to a lot of people who could potentially work for you and, start relationships with them and get to know them a little bit. And then use your process vigorously. Don't let anybody slip through because they're somebody's friend. Everybody goes through the same exact hiring process. And I'm a big believer in using tools like the OMG, Objective Management Group. They have an assessment, a candidate assessment. I'm a big believer in using those because it takes some of the guesswork out and it gives you one more indicator, right? So use a tool like that. And then it's like hire slowly, fire fast. That's old advice, but it's still true. We are desperate sometimes to hire salespeople. And so we don't get a good fit. And then we need them out there so fast that we don't give them enough training or enough support. So if you're hiring salespeople, make sure you have a system for them to slide into that is supportive and they have what they need to be successful.
Great advice. All right, we're going to jump into live Q&A. And so if you haven't already, drop those questions for Allison. We'll try our best to get to them all, but there's so many, but I'll try to pool some of them together. So there's a couple of questions around LinkedIn and sales and how founders, CEOs, as well as sales reps can utilize it. So any advice around just LinkedIn as a tool for sales?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to type this, but I'll just say it. If you don't get your question answered, please connect with me on LinkedIn and go ahead and send me your question that way too. Okay. All right. So LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a great tool if you use it well. I think all social media, there's so many different tools that you can use. Number one, meet your customer where they are. So are your customers on LinkedIn? Are they actively using LinkedIn? I'm going to say some portion of them are. Not all of them, but some portion are using it. So yes, it could be a very good tool. What do people want on LinkedIn? They want thought leadership. They're looking for ideas. They're looking for how others do things. They're looking for advice. They're looking for innovation. So what are you providing on LinkedIn? Now, a lot of people put up a profile and merely use LinkedIn to search and learn about other people. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. If you go look at my profile, what am I going to do? Go look at yours, right? All right. I go look at yours. There's no photo. You don't have a banner for your company. Your profile is poorly filled out. You haven't posted anything. Do you think I want to do business with you? It's like going to a trade show with a bag over your head and no business cards. What are you doing? So people come up to shake your hand. You're standing there with a bag over your head. No. So if you're going to use LinkedIn, use it right. Get your profile filled out, make it look engaging, put information on there that will pique their curiosity so they want to have a conversation with you. And then share great content, either content that you curated or content that you created, or better yet, a mixture of both, right? Don't just be a billboard and post, my company's at a trade show, come visit the booth. Our company sells this, our company sells this, our company's having a webinar. Don't do that. People want some meat. They don't even need a fancy picture. They need some content that gives them an idea of something they can do. That's what they're looking for. So if you're going to use LinkedIn, use it well. And yeah, I mean, I get leads from LinkedIn every day. I have conversations with hundreds and hundreds of people. I could never keep up with that many people in person as I can keep up with on LinkedIn. I can keep up with hundreds of people in a week by interacting with them on LinkedIn, clicking like, making a comment, sending a private message to them. Absolutely. Every senior executive of the company should use LinkedIn because it helps their salespeople connect to their network and possibly get an introduction. Every salesperson should use it. Every customer success, every marketing person, every finance person, every ops person. Why? Because they all have a network. And if they connect their networks together, there's a lot of leverage there. So yeah, use LinkedIn.
Great. Another topic that hasn't really been discussed today, but I'm curious on your thoughts around this. So a question around advice to like direct to mail marketing, like mailboxes, actual postage. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that. I'll just make a disclaimer, but 100% it works. And I think that I've done this forever and it has always worked and it still works. I buy beautiful cards. I happen to have a friend who's an artist here in Nevada, and he takes beautiful pictures of all wild Nevada scenes of every season and of all the events that we do here. And they're beautifully on these cards. And I handwrite notes to people and hand address it with a stamp and send it to them. Of course, they open it. I also do what you call contact marketing. My friend, Stu Heineck, he is the inventor, the grandfather of contact marketing. Read his book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. And his newest book, which is How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. Both of those are fantastic. And what he talks about is contact marketing. And what he does is he sends things in the mail. If you can see over my shoulder, there's a great big whiteboard up there that is a cartoon that he drew for me, right? And mailed it to me in a great big box. Who's not going to open that? The box had drawings, that his own drawings on the outside. Yes, it was printed, but I mean, it was really very interesting, right? So people will open it. I often send books, not books that I wrote, but books that I read that I think are great. I just recently sent all of the CEOs that I work with the How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed book. And we did kind of a joint effort, and Stu helped me package it up really cool. And we sent them out and people just couldn't believe it. It was phenomenal, right? So there's definitely sending things to people's mailbox. People are, oh, they're not in their office. Well, somebody still has to pick up the mail. And when you mention that you're going to drop something in the mail, people are giving up their home addresses like that. So I don't know what to say. Now there's a ton of companies. I don't even want to start to name names, but I'm going to name a couple just so you know what I'm talking about. There's companies like Sendoso and Alice, spelled ALYCE, and there's one called Post something. They will send stuff for you. So you set it up with your company. You might have logoed goods, or you might have a variety of things that can be sent out. Now this has to be done in conjunction with a campaign. It just can't be random. But yes, getting stuff into people's mailboxes absolutely works. So there's many different ways to do it. There's many experts out there who can help you do it. I think you should do it.
Love it. And we've hosted Stu for both books, How to Get a Meeting with Anybody or Anyone, and also How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. So if I can ask the production team to drop links into either one of those YouTube videos, they're both solid gold content, and love both books, recommend both of them. All right, so another question here. Any advice on how to mitigate risk if and when granting access to new salespeople to existing customers?
Okay, that's a good one, really. As small businesses, when I'm saying small, I'm saying under 500 million, right? And you're selling to companies, again, that are 10 to 1,000 times your size. They're $5 billion companies or 10 billion or whatever. And you're trying to sell to them. And if you have big customers that are important, strategic customers, but you have to introduce new customer success people, new salespeople, new subject matter experts, sales engineers, whoever it is that you need to introduce, you do need to mitigate the risk. So it's really important that new people or people who are going to be moved to an account understand a day in the life of their customer, right? They should understand that anyway, but they need to understand it in general, and then they need to understand it specifically for the account that they're going to be placed on. So if you are moving a seller and you have any concerns, about putting them on that account, then you need to wait and spend time with them and prepare them, right? So they need to see the org chart of the people who you generally are in contact with, so they understand how those people relate to each other. They need to read up on the history. They need to read the website. They need to follow the social media. And then they need to specifically understand how that customer uses your product successfully, right? All the use cases, and be comfortable with all of that. And I think then you'll have more success. But if you feel in your gut that someone is not going to be a good fit, or you're nervous that there is risk to mitigate, then maybe you have the wrong person, or maybe that person should not be introduced. So your gut tells you a lot.
I love that. Well, we could spend so much more time with you, but we are at the end of our content portion today. Alice, thank you so much. What's one golden piece of advice to help energize everybody in our audience today's sales moving forward?
Well, I really believe that your customers want you to find them. They need what you have, and it is your responsibility to get out there and educate them and help them find the solutions that they need to be even more successful than they are today. So I just want all of you to think about, what can you do to make it easier to be your customer?
What a way to end it. Well, Alice, thank you so much. It's been so great to learn from you today, and so many great sales strategies and scaling tips and tricks. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone on our team, and I'm sure everyone in attendance.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for all the questions. And again, if I didn't answer your question, just find me on LinkedIn, send me a quick message, and then I'll try to answer it there as well.
Great. All right. Thank you, Alice. And for everyone still on, we've got some great upcoming webinars, so you can check out the links for those in the chat. We'd also love your feedback on what you'd like to see in the future. So fill out that survey and let us know. But on behalf of everyone on our team, thank you, Alice, and thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you all back online soon. Have a good one, everyone.